Time now for the weather and Jeff Gianola, and you got three little friends there, I see, huh?
Snowballs from the Channel 2 parking lot. I went out there. A lot of snow out there. Most areas in Portland have anywhere from 1 to 4 inches. We had quite a lot in the Channel 2 parking lot, so I thought I'd make a few snowballs.
The year was 1984. Bill O'Reilly was anchoring the news on KATU, and I was just starting out as a weatherman.
See that Channel 2 back there?
I see it in the monitor, right?
Okay, here we go.
All right, you ready?
Right on the button.
Very good.
Now watch me have to clean that up. That was kind of fun.
Now, decades later, Bill and I reunited once again to talk about our early days in broadcasting here in Portland.
Look, those were interesting days in Portland with Tracy Barry and you and me, and we delivered the news in a very professional way, but we had some fun.
We really did.
Yeah, and it was a defining experience for me, because I had never been to Oregon at all, and I had to learn about the state and the culture very quickly. It's changed a lot, obviously, you know.
It has.
Because you're the dean of television news in Portland, and you should be very proud of that fact. I think you've outlasted everybody, right? Is there anybody else around?
No, there's Steve Dunn on Channel 2, but he wasn't there when you started at KTU before you left. Bill, you know what I remember? Do you remember where we used to go to dinner about 3 times a week?
Yeah, the Renaissance or some kind of...
No. We went to a place called Poor Richard's in the Hollywood district, and it was like $9.50, and we each got a little steak, and we each got, the potato, and you and I loved that place. And I would pay one time, you would pay the next time, and we would just discuss issues of the day. You would talk about how you grew up, and I look back on the times, and here were both of us not knowing what was in store for our careers. Of course, you just went astronomical in your career, and I chose to stay in Portland. But Bill, I also remember that sometimes after the late news, we would go over to Club 21, and you were not a drinker, but you said, I'll buy, get over there, I'll buy Gianola, but you would say, wait for me. Weren't you writing like an opinion piece way back then, like for the Boston Globe or the Boston? And I remember being so impressed with that a local anchor here in Portland was actually kind of on a national stage.
Yeah, I came out of Boston to go to Portland, and I was writing for the Boston Herald 2 times a week on their op-ed page. So I had to knock that out because Oregon's 3 hours behind Massachusetts. And I go, okay, do I have time to do this now? But I've always been a hard worker, as you have. And that's the key to success. Longevity is you put in it every day, you go and you earn your money. And what I liked about our team at KATU back then was that we were regular folks.
Yes.
We weren't snooty or any of that. And some of these broadcasters will go, oh, here I am. It's like, no, we're just regular people. We're going to give you a solid half hour. And then you kept that approach. So when I would travel through Portland, which wasn't often over the years, but I did get there a few times, and I'd flip on the station. I would see you, and I go, Gianola #1 is doing the news. I'm glad to see that. Not that there's anything wrong with the weather, but you don't want to be in the weather closet too long.
No.
And number 2, you had a very, very good connection to Southern Washington State and to Oregon. You knew the area, you cared about the area, they picked that up, and that's why you've been so successful for so many years.
Bill, when I first started K2 and then you started, Portland was really taking off. Pioneer Square had just opened. It was a really vibrant place, and people were about to discover the secret of Portland. And now it's a much different place. We have one of the highest office vacancy rates downtown. We haven't recovered from the pandemic like a lot of other cities. And I think the Wall Street Journal recently wrote an article saying we're kind of in a business doom loop here in Portland. I think they've got the drug thing under control after they redid Measure 110 and sort of rescinded some of the things that Oregon voters voted for. But the fact of the matter is, downtown isn't as vibrant as when you and I first started at KATU right now. And how does Portland get out of that? How do you change that reputation that happened back in 2020 with those awful protests? How does a city change that reputation? Things are on the mend here, but we're still suffering with the scars of 2020 and the reputation.
I may have to come back, Gino. If I have to come back, I'll change everything. Okay? Yeah. You need a strong hand. And it's not just Portland, it's every American city, because you got this collision between traditional Americans and progressive Americans. And the traditional Americans, and when I went to Portland in the mid-1980s, it was, Oregon anyway, a primarily traditional state, all right? You didn't have this influx of progressive thought that happened later. I remember Mayor Budd. Remember Mayor Budd? I was out there. And Hatfield was a senator, and you had all these guys who'd been around, but they would draw a line, but that line has evaporated. So you need to put the line back. And Portland is a very desirable place to live. It's a lot less expensive than Seattle, okay? And it's beautiful. I used to hang out at the Japanese Garden on the weekends, and it was just a stunning place. I go down to Cannon Beach. It was just great. But then there was this influx, and a lot of money came in with it, of far left people who pretty much took over, not just Multnomah County, but the entire state. And when you're going to be permissive, that's not good for business. Business needs calm and social order, not fascism, not brutality. You don't have to do that. But you got to say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. And that's where the authorities in Portland went off the rails. They did not enforce that line, but you can bring it back. And I've seen it across the country.
Bill, you mentioned Hatfield, and I remember, do you remember this? You came to Portland and you wanted to do an investigative report on Mark Hatfield, much beloved
That's
here,
right.
a great senator. And I think you called it the Prince of Oregon. And I remember you ruffled a lot of feathers. And it was my first experience looking at that good investigative journalism does ruffle feathers. And I think you were called up to the front office and they wanted you to change some things in the story. You eventually did the story, but I don't think you did the story as strongly as you wanted to do the story. Do you remember that?
Sure, that was a big deal. And I didn't cave to, look, when I came into Portland, Oregon, I brought a big city sensibility with me.
Yes,
because
I remember that.
Born and raised in New York City, where my outfit is now, and then educated and worked in Boston, two giant metro centers where you got to be tough as nails. And I brought that. They wanted that. And they said, well, we need a change. We need to get younger viewers to watch. So we'll bring in this nut O'Reilly from the East Coast, and he just shake it up. Well, I shook it up.
You
and
sure
I
did.
didn't have anything against Hatfield. I thought he was he had a lot of clout and he did a lot of good for Oregon. But there were some things that he did, some deals that he made that people didn't know about that were not good. And it was my job to explain to the station chiefs, hey, look, we're not going to go after and hatchet him, but I'm going to ask him the tough questions. So most of that report got on the air. I can't remember being angry with the powers that be at KATU. They didn't gut it. But I understood their concern. I mean, this is the most powerful guy in the state, and here's this punk O'Reilly coming in trying to take him out. But I wasn't trying to take him out. I was trying to establish a journalistic line that people would respect.
Hey, Bill, I really enjoy, at BillO'Reilly.com when you do those YouTube extras. And you recently had one on the NBA gambling thing. And of course, that has a Portland tie because the head coach of the Blazers, Chauncey Billups, is accused in that. And you raised some good issues in there. And I have an uncle in my past named Needles Gianola. You, growing up on the East Coast, knew some of the mob guys. And you stated in this, there's more going on here with the mob. And, why were these guys that made millions of dollars doing things for a few $1,000s? And you kind of mentioned the fact, well, the mafia is involved, and sometimes the mafia knows how to extort you. They have something on you.
Yeah, they got something on. I was surprised at Billups because he's not like Rozier, the other guy who got popped in the Miami Heat. Rozier is irresponsible, owes millions of dollars, and you can see why organized crime get their hooks into him. But I was surprised about Chauncey Billups. When we were there, the Blazers, and I think it still maintains to this day, were the attraction in Portland. I mean, we went to the games, a lot of fun, and all that. And I feel bad that this even happened. I don't like to see people's lives destroyed. And Chauncey Billups, a Hall of Famer. And, when I saw it, I went, oh, But it looks like there's going to be a lot more to come out on this story. Because if you are in the professional world now, there's gambling everywhere. And if you're addicted to gambling, as Pete Rose was, all right, and if you're involved with narcotics in any way, if you're having an affair, whatever it may be, and the mob gets wind of that and they get something on you, then they own you. And that's what I think happened here.
Let me change gears here because I do want to talk. I've read your books, and I really like the latest book because we often say, how does someone turn out to be so horrible and so evil? And you look at, these past evil people in history, the origins of evil, and, obviously Hitler's in there, but you look at Hitler was just sort of a very sheepish guy. I mean, not much to him. How does someone like that come into power and be evil? And the things you said about Putin, we think, Putin's a pretty ruthless guy, and you explore his past as a young boy, and you see how these people in history, these evil, evil people who do horrible things, you see you explore the seeds of how they got that way. I mean, it's a pretty fascinating book.
Yeah, thank you. Confronting Evil, and make sure that Powell's has a lot of them in stock.
I will.
Okay?
I will.
I don't know if they're big fans of mine down there, but I was at Yankee Stadium on 9/11, which is, every year is very sad here in New York. And I got a call the night before from the White House, and they said, would you meet President Trump in the owner's box at Yankee Stadium? He wants to talk to you about a few things. And I knew one of those things was Putin. I have a fairly good, 35-year friendship with Donald Trump. I've known you longer, but, But I said, when the president asks you to come, you come. It doesn't matter who the president is. So we did have a talk about Putin, and I said, look, I know you're busy, Mr. President, but you gotta read this Putin chapter because it just traces the whole trajectory. And even though, these evildoers, in this world, evil gets a chance, okay? It does, and it always has. That's why Cain and Abel, that is in the Bible, in Genesis, that story. Evil has always been present. Good people have to fight it. Because if early on the Russian people had said no to a guy like Putin, he could never have caused all of this mayhem. The same thing with the German people. They looked away. They knew who Hitler was. He wrote a book and said, I want to exterminate anybody I don't like. Okay? But people have a tendency to look away. And I wrote Confronting Evil to kind of get people looking back. All right? And say, look, we don't want this kind of leadership. We don't want this kind of destruction. We don't want this kind of evil if you're a religious person, okay? And we're going to do everything we can to prevent it. And the book is taken off, as you know, #1 on the New York Times list. And I'm happy about that because there's always a reason why I do what I do. And that's been a theme for my 50-year career.
Yeah, well, here I'm going to retire. I mean, I'm not really going to retire. I've got some little things I'm working on. I got 4 grandkids now. When I knew you, I didn't have any kids. And now I've got 4 grandkids,
I'm stunned you'd be able to pull that off, Gianola.
Hey, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do want to ask you a question about the future and some politics. Where do you see us, the country, going into the midterms? And then where do you see us beyond that in the next presidential election? It's so many things can happen between now and then, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a trend back toward being more traditional in America. There's a study that we reported on tonight that says 70% of Americans feel the Democratic Party has lost its way. Republicans shouldn't be cheering because 65% say Republicans have lost their way. So the two parties are not in good stead with the folks. But I think that there's a trend now that says, look, enough. Enough. We want social order. We want to tamp down crime. We don't want crazy behavior like drug addicts in Pioneer Square so the kids can't even go to visit. We don't want that anymore. All right? So we're going to go back a little bit to a traditional point of view. And I think the leadership, Donald Trump is an exception, but he's going to be off the stage in 3 years. And the Republican Party is going to be back to, scrambling. It's not going to be a Trump thing any longer. And that's the big thing. Once you lose that kind of a presence, which is totally unique in American history, the only guy that came close was Andrew Jackson. And I write all about that stuff in Confronting the Presidents. But it's going to be very hard to predict day by day, but I can predict societal trends. And I think that the people are going to move to the right in this country.
We go over to Club 21, remember, and you would say, I'm going to buy, but no coffee drinks because they were more expensive.
Yeah, no coffee drinks, no tropical drinks, no coffee drinks. You got a good memory, Gianola. I remember that so vividly. And I think I horrified half the newsroom, but the other half
was laughing.
Enjoyed it. Yeah, because it wasn't boring. No. I mean, we come to work and the day would go like that because who knew what crazy O'Reilly was going to do.
No.
So I enjoyed and valued my time in Oregon. Congratulations on your retirement. Grandkids, do what you can for them in every way. It's very important to have that in children's lives. They got the double dip now. They got the father, but they got the grandfather. And it's very, very important. So I'm happy for all of your success. I followed you for these years. I followed Tracy Barry when she retired. And you're good people out there. And if I can ever be of service to you, Gianola, you let me know, okay?
All right. Well, I am going to ask you a favor. My son Michael's out there in New York, and he was a CBS page, and he's done some other things, but he was recently working on the Fox Weekend as associate producer. But I would love for him to reach out to you, and maybe he could do a job shot over there at News Nation or something, one day with you.
We'll help him. We'll be happy to help him.
All right.
You got my info. Just let me know where he is, what he's doing, and we'll get him in front of some people.
Yeah, that'd be great, Bill. Well, listen, what a pleasure. And I just got such a kick when I realized that I had videos saved from our time here at KATU. And when I ran that on the air, people just loved it, including our news director who said, let's set this up. And so thank you for your time, Bill. All right, take care.
Good luck, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Good luck to you, too. Take care.